welcome all of you to Wednesday or Friday career conversations. We are going to be talking about don't get scammed or slammed by job scams. And my name is Jennifer Weggeman. I'm a workshop facilitator here at workNet DuPage Career Center. And we are talking today on Friday, May 28th, 2021. Thank you again for attending. Hopefully you're going to learn a lot about job scams today. We're going to go over a few just basic tips. Today is a webinar, so we're going to use the chat. If you have some things to share, you can always put a question mark or a question, the word question, before your comment so that we can easily spot your question when we stop for questions. And then we'll also use the Q&A. If you prefer, you can type in your question there as well. And then everybody will be able to see the responses to those questions. So we do have a lot to cover today. So I'm going to just dive in here, but we're going to learn about job scams, employment fraud, and how to protect your private information. So why do you need to keep your antenna up? Well, if you're in job search, you're going to find that you're going to be doing a lot of different things. You're going to be all over the place, and you can be very vulnerable to scammers. So why don't you, take a step back, make sure that you're, going in the right process. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, especially with COVID. There's just been a big year for scammers. This has been like a bonanza year for them, and we'll talk more about that. But don't let the stress of getting a new job make you vulnerable to scams. There's a lot of on-the-spot offers, payments that you might be asked for, information, telling you that you need to pay for training. None of that is probably true. So learn the types of scams, the common job and employment fraud out there, and how to protect your private information. And I'll give you a whole bunch of resources. We are going to send out the PDF of this whole presentation, and I do have a lot of links. And I do encourage you to share this information with anyone you know that is, in job search or even just vulnerable and may not be aware. Yesterday, I did attend the Illinois Attorney General and the FTC hosted a workshop on scams for immigrants and minorities. And there was a lot of information covered, not about specifically job scams, but there was just so much information that they shared. It was very helpful. So anyway, you just have to remember, these are like global, international, sophisticated, operations, and we don't want to have you caught up in that. So there's a wide variety of scams out there. Unfortunately, like I said, this is just job scams that we're going to talk about today. Just for an example, this is the AARP fraud area, and they are, talking about all these different scams. You can click on these. AARP is a large organization. It's free to go and check this stuff out. Everything I mentioned about AARP today, you can go and take a look at this information. You don't have to be a member. Now, like I said, we can't cover all the scams, but please make sure that you communicate this information and share it with other people that might be vulnerable. And just to let them know that this is out there, that these resources are out there. Of course, there's ID theft that's been going on. Social Security fraud has gone up from 2018. There was like 15,000 complaints. Now in 2019, which is the data I have on that, 450,000 complaints. So you can just see the jump in this because it's lucrative. This is where these sophisticated international gangs are, very sophisticated operations. They have the technology. There's IRS fraud, grandparent scams, utility scams. We just got word yesterday that a woman, was, unfortunately, someone was allowed access into her home and they put a thumb drive into her computer. I don't know what was stolen, but we're just hearing a lot of things, out there. The romance scams, long distance sweethearts. Over $304 million was reported lost in 2020. That's a 50% increase in 1 year. That's just what was reported, because many people are ashamed if they get into those kind of scams. So, there's lottery, sweepstakes, there's just a lot of fake stuff out there. So just be careful. We can't get into all of that today, but there is more information and resources, like I said. So you always want to verify, who are you talking to? There's always this immediacy. There's always something that just doesn't add up. You have to pay to win. You have to pay fees to get a grant. And it's always secret, or they ask you to send gift cards, money transfers like Venmo or Zelle or Cash App. Now they're getting into cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, wire transfers. No government agency, no legitimate company is going to ask you to send them gift cards or take pictures of gift cards. That's just not how business is done. So you have to be wary, and if you pay them, you're probably not going to get your money back, and you're not going to get a job. That's just a scam. And they're using job seekers and the job search process to obtain, your trust and to get this information. So unfortunately, job seekers are targeted because guess what? You're going to pick up the phone. You're looking for a job. You're going to comply. And you're vulnerable. You want to get a job. So you're going to respond to emails. If it looks somewhat legitimate, you might respond. But unfortunately, social, just in this past year, there's been social isolation, anxiety, and these scammers use these psychological tactics to gain trust. And they have lists of suckers. I mean, this is like the sucker list is what is paid for by these other gangs so that they can access these people. So don't be a sucker. If you've provided information in the past, you've responded to things, they're going to put you on a list. Just like we have a list for clothing or home goods, they're targeting you as a certain, mark. But these are call centers. These, there's a lot of business here, billions of dollars across the world this is happening. And they facilitate jobs. They have their own hierarchy. They have managers. They have IT people, salespeople, and then they go and create their own operation and just recreate the same scam. And you can buy stuff on the dark web, like for 99 cents, you can get social security numbers. I mean, it's not that expensive to get involved. I wouldn't recommend it as a business opportunity, but these are people that are doing this. And they know so much about you that you think that they know you or that, they're legitimate. And then now there's mules too. People are being pulled into these operations to transfer illegal monies, and they can be caught up in criminal operations and not even know that they're in some kind of an illegitimate situation. There's courses on taking, people's information for like $600 that you could take, so they're very sophisticated. This is like a whole underbelly of, and people think they're not, going to be sucked into this, but they're likely the people that are going to be falling for it. So just be careful, especially if you're even looking into buying a franchise or a business, that's also another very dangerous area. You got to know what you're doing. So again, you're looking for legitimate opportunities. You get requests to upload your resume on many job boards and websites, and they are legitimate websites, but they're not screening who has access to that information. And I've tried to contact a few of them and look at their terms of service. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV, and unfortunately, they absolve all claims of, of any problems. So if you go to them and say, hey, you know, I uploaded my resume and this fake company got my information and scammed me, you know, you're not going to get anywhere with them because it's all on your own choice to do it. And they don't screen these employers, but they'll gladly take their money for a free, you know, or a fake job ad. They will be happy, Glassdoor and Indeed, and they're not monitoring who's posting jobs. It's very lax, I would say. That's just my opinion. So if you have your full address, your email, your LinkedIn, along with your phone numbers, you're probably giving them pretty much all the information they need to reach out to you and to have enough information to build a story around your information so that they can target you. So just be careful about uploading your resume and what you're uploading. And just think about, you know, you're putting it up on the billboards like on the highway. Unless you have some protection, this is why we recommend having a job search email. If they have access and they get your password somehow, because again, a lot of this information has been hacked from, you know, reliable companies, and we're hearing about this every day, how these companies are getting hacked and there's malware. So my recommendation is just change your passwords frequently, make them difficult for people to guess. You know, not 1, 2, 3, 4 password, things like that. Your birth date in your email, anywhere in your email as your name. You know, you could have your name in your email, but a lot of people I see, they put a birth date in there, or it looks like a birth date or somebody's birth date in your family, which is not good either. So you just have to be careful, and you're a trusting individual, you're trying to get a job, but these are the things you have to be conscious of in this day and age. So just briefly, I'm going to talk about applicant tracking systems, because so many of us, when we're looking for a job, we're going to apply via applicant tracking systems. Well, I did discover that unless you are applying to a company that is based in the EU, which is the European Union, they have much stricter data privacy laws than the United States does. So you are not going to have the same protections unless it is a company that's international. So just be aware of that. There's 452 at least at different applicant tracking systems. So there's a lot of sensitive information when you're providing all this information to a company. Hopefully they're going to keep safe, you know, handle it safely. You don't always know what they're going to do with it or if it's going to get hacked, but hopefully, you know, you're applying to, first of all, a legitimate company, you're entering information, and there's hopefully an encrypted system. You don't always know if it's encrypted, but hopefully they have some information on there. At least there's a password. But again, these are very sensitive pieces of information. And since I think it was back in 2017, Equifax, which is one of the large of the 3 credit reporting agencies, was hacked. And out of, let's say, 350 million people in the United States, over 140 million people had their social security number, their name, their date of birth, all that good stuff that the criminals need. That was hacked and dumped onto the web. So even if that happened a few years ago, they can still come back and use that information down the road. And it helps them gain access to other pieces of your life, like your bank account. They could easily take over your email and then change your information, call the bank. You know, if they have enough information, then they can trick the bank into thinking that they're you, and they can change the address so you're not even seen. You know, it's crazy. You don't want this to happen to you, and I'm sure there's some of us on the call here that this has happened to, and it's a nightmare. All right, so just think about all these different, you know, there's bigger ones, there's smaller ones, some are older, some are newer. But for example, ICMS or ICIMS, they have 3 million jobs and they process 75 million applications. And they support nearly 70 million visitors to 4,000 different clients' career sites. So when you see a job description for a company in the background, that is what this ATS system is doing. It's like an add-on for all their other systems. So again, do the math. I mean, that was just one of these 400 and some ATS systems. So the hiring software is a very, growing field because they can automate some of these processes. But more than 60%, I think it's up to 90% in some industries are using ATS systems. It's a big market. And again, unless they're in the EU and they have this Privacy Shield Data Pact for transatlantic data transmission compliance and regulatory requirements, they don't have to encrypt the data. So think about, again, some of these big names and making sure that your information is secure. But again, there are situations where, there could be just exposure points. They're gonna, I guess there's still fax machines being used somewhere, and that piece of paper could just be sitting there, falling on the floor. I mean, I've seen this happen in many places where I've worked. There's just paper sitting there, and it could have a lot of private information. So again, be mindful of what you're sending and to who, how you're sending it, making sure that the right people are the only ones that see it. But again, if there's interviews, sometimes there's multiple people involved in the interview. They're going to pass through email, paper copies. I don't mean to scare anyone. I can feel the dread when you just start thinking about this stuff, because a lot of the stuff you've already done, you're thinking, oh, geez, what did I just do? But just be mindful of it. And again, this is why you want to talk to people in your industry and at potential target companies, and maybe do that first before starting just madly applying to any number of hundreds of websites. I know that the job search can seem desperate and you want to think about numbers and volume, but I think if you target the right companies and legitimate companies, you're not just applying blindly to some request. Again, we'll talk more about these scams and how they operate, but unless it's encrypted, it's not secure. So if you're sending private information, make sure it's encrypted or that you have uploaded it to a very secure, like Citrix is what we use with our clients' information, and we're fully HIPAA regulated. We have very strict controls on our data that we have on our clients. So just to make you more comfortable, that is definitely in place at our office. Now, if you do get a job, this is what happens. Sometimes you're the new person and you're going to take down the whole network. Don't be that person. There's tons of crazy emails that are going out now, and they're trying to target a lot of different organizations. You just saw these, if you read the news, unless you're under a rock somewhere, you have seen this terrible hacking that's going on, and it doesn't take much. It's just a little vulnerability in these systems, and they can get in there and they plant this malware, and then they can later go and, corrupt these systems, and then they charge money to get the systems back up. It's just crazy. We got a lot going on in our world right now. So hopefully we are going to resolve it. Not by this phone call, by this call today, but hopefully soon. So think about, what you're reading. Make sure that you know who the sender is, and it can look like it's legitimate. Things happen even locally. A couple of years ago, somebody thought they were sending a request back for employee W-2s to their supervisor. They replied to the email with the information. It was like 200 and some W-2s, which have all this information on it. And after they sent it, they said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent that. And then they called the person to confirm, is this what you requested? And they said, no. So, all those employees got their information. stolen basically. But these are phishing schemes. These are telephone calls, text, advisories. They advise you to click a link. They want to steal information, eventually money, infect computers, just don't fall for it. All right, so we're going to take a moment to talk about employment scams. So how do you spot a scam? Well, they're not always easy to spot, but there usually are some, pretty open tips that I will tell you. So how do you protect yourself? Well, first of all, you're on the call today, so you're educating yourself and you're, hopefully going to learn a few tips today. Maybe it'll just remind you of things you already knew. But the FTC is our leading trade consumer protection agency, and they help, stop all these scammers. Now they're very wily, and they pop up and then they go away and they start up in another place. So it's hard, and they're often overseas. So there's really makes it a lot harder. But these are some sites that you can check out. Just trust after you verify. Don't trust everybody that's telling you stuff. This is just the world we live in. They can really work you over, and especially when you're in a transition or looking for a job or have some stress, they know how to push those buttons. So how do you spot a scam? Well, again, they might promise you things. They make it very attractive. There's always some kind of urgency. They're going to hire you. They're the ones trying to get you to come work for them. So they must really think highly of you, so they're puffing up your self-confidence, all these things. They might ask you to deposit a check, so you can go and get equipment. Well, then a day or two later, guess what? The check bounces and you're on the hook. Now you got a problem with your bank. So again, they're right away asking you, and this is even recruiters now, fake telemarketer, scammer recruiters are asking for your private personal information, and you don't even know what job that they allegedly are going to set you up with an interview for. You don't know what the salary is. They haven't hired you. There's no reason to provide that information until you are hired, and then they perhaps may do a background check, all those good things for verification on their end. They would not ask for that stuff at the get-go. Now they might, try to tell you otherwise, but hang up, don't even engage. That's a waste of your time, which is, unfortunately we can't bill them. But they're going to make promises. They're going to say, oh yeah, you have to pay this fee up front. It's just a small fee, even if it's $50, when you're in job search, nobody can afford that. So think about what you're doing. Don't get caught up in it. Step back, talk to somebody and just say, look, this is what I'm hearing. Does this sound legitimate? Because it may seem very attractive, but no one can promise you a job. You have to get your own job. And if you deal with people like that, it's not legitimate. There's always urgency. They always say you got to act fast. Why? Why is that? Or they might want you to open a bank account, wire money to somewhere else. Don't become a money mule. Sometimes it seems legitimate just the way they're describing it, but again, you're only hearing this information from them. Go out and Google, go call the Better Business Bureau, find out if this is a scam, or if it even smells slightly like a scam. I would not take the chance. And working from home, this is a big draw right now. A lot of people do want to work remote for a variety of reasons, and they are preying on that. They're always right on the pulse of whatever is going on in our world. They are always on top of it because they're scammers. This is their job. They're good at it. So again, when you evaluate, don't just give your information blindly, to anybody that asks. You have to verify. You can call the company directly, the legitimate company, and verify. who they are and if this is legitimate. Is this part of their hiring process? Often they're, becoming imposters, just looking at people that are showing up to look at these jobs. They're, posting jobs. We'll talk about this in a minute. But it's just, there's a lot of foolishness, and I would not take the stress when they're saying, oh, we can't move forward until we get this information. Well, you know what, it's going nowhere anyway, so don't fall for it. If they are a legitimate company and they have a legitimate job offer for you, you can confirm that. So anybody can create an email signature block that looks really impressive. Oh, it's this big company on Michigan Avenue or wherever. Anybody, I could set that up in 5 seconds. Anybody could do that. So just be very cautious, and especially if it's just any hint or any inkling that this is not legitimate, just hang up, move on. Don't let them waste any more of your time, because that's costing you time and money too. You could be doing productive things. So when you're, again, just doing your day, just make sure that they could come at you all different ways: email, text, phone calls. Again, just if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So before I get into any scam examples, I'll go ahead and check the questions. Siobhan, is there any questions?
I don't have any.
All right. So anyway, we are just, going to move through a few things here. We got a lot to cover, but I'll be happy to stop for questions if you have any. So job scams. Here's an example. I was in the boot camp and a woman came up to me on a break and she said, I just got this email, it was an email and it was on her phone. So, it's harder to read that sometimes than if you're on your laptop or PC. But the way this looked, let me pull it up here. Okay, so just looking at it, if you look at it fast, it might look legitimate. But then I started looking at it and I said, can you email that to me? And I told her I would look at it after the workshop. So I started looking at it and it had this urgency. Okay, she gets the email at 6 in the morning. I don't know. Most people are not at work at 6 in the morning. Some are, but unlikely. She's, evidently involved with Career Builder, and that's where they said that they reviewed her resume. So that may or may not be true. Again, that could just be something their template is saying. But if you have submitted your resume to jobs or you've posted it, you would think, okay, well, they saw my resume in Career Builder. So again, then you start looking at this. They didn't even fill out the position. They just had the placeholder for it. And then Google Hangout or, Gmail Hangout, whatever this was a few years ago. This is still a good example. But you have to meet us on, Gmail. Now that was weird back then because it was before the pandemic. And so not a lot of companies were doing anything like that, remote interviewing. So I did look at the website up at the top and it was a legitimate restaurant, but they just, they just spoofed that it was coming from this restaurant. But it was out in Massachusetts. So if she had looked at that and checked out the website, and then why does the HR person have a Gmail account? If it's a legitimate company, they would probably have, although that doesn't confirm that it's a legitimate company, but these are just so many red flags. And then, so she got the interview that day. When does that happen? For those of you, I know I'm working with people. I mean, it takes planning. They set it up and it's a week or two out, or, it might be the next couple of days. But I mean, it's not going to be from 10 to 2 p.m. that day that you get the email. Unlikely. And then the grammar, there's always bad grammar. So just watch out for this stuff and just make sure that you just delete it and just forget about it. Don't engage with them. Because again, if you start engaging with them, they're going to know you're a legitimate, that's a legitimate email, and that they're going to keep probably harassing you, maybe just with different opportunities, different ways. All right, so the next example, and this one was just more recently and was one of my clients, and I'm not going to share who this was. So I've whited out some information, but they received an email and it was an imposter company, and they had posted a job on LinkedIn. So they paid for a job ad on LinkedIn as an imposter for a legitimate company. So I just want you to think about that for a minute. That's not good. If LinkedIn, who has, 750 million profiles globally, if they're accepting job ads and they don't verify, it was a small company. So again, if it's a larger company, they probably would have more control over that. But again, so this client sent me an email on a Sunday night. It happened to be Easter this year. So that was kind of a red flag when I started looking, and I'll show in the next slide the email that this client received. So I've highlighted some of the things here. Again, Google Hangout, which now that we are doing a lot of interviews remote, might not be as unthinkable, but still, there's some red flags. And when I saw that he got this and he said he had a job offer, I was like, well, wait a minute, you haven't even interviewed. How do you get a job offer without an interview? First of all, I didn't know if, I was just looking into this. But again, there's a sequence of events that happen in job search. And as you get into it, and especially if you haven't been job searching for a while, there could be different things that have changed. That's why we always recommend our clients attend our Wednesday job tips. There's a shameless plug for our Wednesday events. They happen every week, and you're able to come and review the information on many topics surrounding the job search. We take a deep dive. But there's a sequence of events, and you can't get a job offer from just applying for a job and getting an email stating that. So then the person did say that they checked out the company. So that was good. I always recommend that you do your due diligence. But, I started to look at the email. All right. So this email, this is actually the company, which is a legitimate company, but this person was imposter and was sending this email on behalf of this company. So right away, I look at the date stamp. So when he received this information, it was already Monday somewhere. So that's out of the country. If he's getting this information on a Sunday, who's working on a holiday weekend? I don't think it's going to be for this kind of job. I mean, I'm not excluding that totally, but and the fact that they were already into Monday was a red flag. So if you go to LinkedIn and you look at this company, they had some typos, they had some information that just didn't make sense. So they had taken over this company's LinkedIn profile, company profile. So if you or anyone has a company out there, make sure you take that and let LinkedIn know that it's your company, because this company obviously didn't do that. They didn't think LinkedIn was that important, but this is a very elaborate, I don't know what they were trying to do in the end. I'm sure it was to get private information or to ask for them to send money or do something nefarious, but luckily we never got to that point. So then they state, that, you've got to contact this person on email. Well, this Gmail, it's the same kind of script that we saw just in the first example, but they want to schedule the interview and it's urgent. It is imperative. Well, who says? I mean, we don't know for sure. And then at the end, I saw, and they're really hoping that you stay safe during the COVID. That's nice of a scammer. So you just have to be careful. And the problem is, you think you've got a legitimate interview coming up, you're preparing, you show up, And who knows what they're going to, hit you with, because you're already going down one train track and they're going to switch the tracks on you. So what I told the client was call the company directly, verify that you have an interview, and make sure that you're talking to somebody at the organization, that this is a legitimate, because it just didn't look, it looked fishy. Sure enough, the client calls and finds out it was a scam. There was no interview scheduled. They didn't know anything about him applying for a job. Now, he did report it to LinkedIn, which is I highly recommend that anybody do that. But it was hijacked. They were imposter and they were doing some kind of elaborate scam, and they're fishing for people that are going to respond. And if you're in job search, you're going to respond because it looks like a legitimate opportunity. They're doing a bait and switch on you. So unfortunately, that didn't turn into anything. It was a waste of time. But hopefully, from learning of this, and I do appreciate that he shared this with me because I was able to hopefully help him avoid getting into any problems. But I would like to stop again. Any questions? I see one in the chat.
There's a couple questions. First one, how do you protect your email when you use computers at the library?
Well, make sure you log out. You don't want to step away, go to the bathroom, because you don't know who's going to be walking by and they can change your information quickly. We've had people at our resource room before the pandemic who would just get up, leave, and they would leave their email open, not pay attention. They, close out the browser, close down the computer. So again, just be careful if you're out in public settings, public Wi-Fi. There are many ways to encrypt your information. And if you push back, why do you need this information right now? I wouldn't respond with information until and it's legitimate. You got to verify, then trust. So be careful, if you're on computers, you may be caught up in your job search, but just step back. I hope that answered that question. And then I see the next question. I was told maybe to not have your phone number on your LinkedIn profile. Well, again, you can use a Google Voice number. I recommend that. Again, use a job search email. You can always forward that to your personal emails. But that way, once you stop your job search, you're not going to continue to get a whole bunch of stuff into your personal email. And if you're posting your resume anywhere and you're posting these numbers, again, with Google Voice, you can have it roll over to your personal. You're not going to miss any calls. But a legitimate company is going to leave a voice message. And that's my next slide.
Okay. And then there's one.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one, someone mentions, are there any situations where workNet DuPage sends an email from an IO email address? And then also additionally graphics, emails were screened. So basically she's asking if workNet DuPage sends any emails other than through workNet DuPage.
No, not that I'm aware of. Anybody that signed up for our email list, they would have something coming from, I think it's a constant contact email, yes. But that's generated out of workNet DuPage, and it should have something in that email. IO is what you used to have Yahoo groups, and now they're called .io is, I think, how the extension is. And those are just groups. If you're receiving information from us, it should not have a .io at the end. It should be worknetdupage.org.
Okay. And let's see here. A couple more are coming in. What do you do when a legitimate employer, school district, requires that you provide your social security number during the application process?
Well, you have a choice. You can provide it and hope that it's encrypted. Again, how do you know they're legitimate? As long as you do know they're legitimate, hopefully they're, taking concerns over all this private information. And what we've heard from HR representatives that we deal with is that they want to get all this information up front, whether they ever interview or not, they want to have all this information up front, because at the back end, they're going to have to try and track all this down. So they're making the job seeker spend time and effort and potentially breach their information just for the ease of HR to have all this information, so that when they do extend a job offer and you do get hired, they have everything they need. They don't have to chase you down with personal time, company time, but that's not something they have to do then. So they're trying to automate this. So I get it on their end, but if you never even get a call for an interview, why did you just send someone that you don't know how it's going to be stored? I just think that's crazy. But again, you can't go forward and they won't let you move through fields unless you put that information in. Now, sometimes you can put in like 999, 999, you can put 000, it might take it. If you just don't fill it out, you probably can't move forward. They can always get it later, but again, following their format could potentially knock you out of the interview process if you don't follow it. Now, we just had a recruiter talk, what was that, about 2 weeks ago. And, again, we covered a lot of information about how recruiters are asking for information, because that happens on behalf of the companies. And again, you want to make sure that you're watching some of these webinars, because they do cover a lot of relevant things that are touching on this topic. And we, are not able to give you every detail in 1 hour, but hopefully that helps.
And then some more questions here is, are there some encrypt tools out there?
Well, I know if you're using Microsoft and you want to send something that's private and you want it encrypted, you have to click on that in your version of Outlook. I don't know that that's available on Gmail. I don't know enough about it, but you can certainly research this and find out how you can send information or scan it and have it be private and encrypted. That means that nobody can forward it beyond the email that you send back. They have the encryption unlock on the other end because you've agreed to send it to them. And then there's also 2-factor authentication with a lot of things that you have in your life. I highly recommend, like for your bank, they send you a code before you can unlock and log in, because if somebody gets access, maybe they're not going to have your phone, so they won't be able to get in. So again, it's a hassle. I mean, everything in life has a price, right? But sometimes you're happy to take that step after you've been hacked. It's no fun.
Okay, and then I'm going to combine a couple of questions all together, but a couple people are asking in reference to why do they ask for the last 4 of your social security number, and also questions in reference to if you're filling out an application, do you want to put and they ask for your date of birth, do you put it on there?
Well, again, this is kind of what I said before, like why, first of all, why do they need all that? It's hopefully to identify you as one single individual. You're not going to get mixed up with another John Smith or Joan Job Seeker or whoever. But that's the challenge, is why do we need all this information? It's already out there. I mean, for most of us, our information has probably been hacked and it's probably out there. So now it's almost, we've opted in. We didn't have a choice. I used to work in data services for a large billion-dollar company, and they got hacked. And it was never in the news. I always thought that was interesting. That's a whole story in itself. But what happens is, they were smart and they thought ahead. And I think you have to live in like California to even be, notified if there's a data breach with your information. Not all states will even notify you. The companies don't have to. So again, the consumer is not getting service, I think, on this. And this, is a bigger, story outside of our job search scams, but it feeds into this whole thing. Why do you have to, I'm sure the last 4 digits of my social security number are out there somewhere, because if that's all they need, typically what happens is, on the other side of it, if you're contacting, a utility company or your bank or whatever, and they're verifying who you are, you would have to know that information, your date of birth, your last 4 of your social, so that they can verify that that's you. Now, those are, probably horrible things to verify with right now, because there's quizzes that people fill out on, Facebook. What's your hometown? What's your date of birth? People are providing this information, and guess what? They're building dossiers on people so that when they do go ahead and apply or try and take over a bank account, they can do it because they have your information and they keep track of this stuff. They're very sophisticated. So again, always question, how are you storing this information? Why am I putting this in here? What do you need it for? Now, HR is not going to probably answer you. You're just going to have to move on. If you don't feel comfortable submitting that information to that organization, then if you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. Don't apply there. It's just, until they start. I mean, a lot of people do abandon these application processes because they're just too cumbersome and they're too much of a violation. And right now it is kind of a labor shortage, even though you would think with all the millions of people laid off, there are companies that cannot find talent and they have to look at their own processes. We can tell them, we try to tell them, to provide living wages. We try to tell them that people just don't want to fill out, screens and screens of personal information. But until these companies feel it, I would push back and just let them know.
I would also say with that, you have to determine whether or not, well, if this is an application, then, your application is basically one of a legal document. So you want to make sure that you're being honest on your application. You want to be honest in your resume as well, but on your application, it is a legal document. So I believe most likely everybody has to complete an application at some point in time. And as Jennifer says, if you don't want to complete it or you don't want to apply to the company and that's what they're asking for, then that's going to be your choice and not complete it and move on to the next company. But for the most part, on applications, they are going to ask that information. So if you're not comfortable with it, you can maybe, like Jennifer said, you may call the organization and ask why they need the information, but then you have to kind of be careful in doing so. You have to weigh what you want with that particular organization. If it's a legitimate organization that you're wanting to apply for and you know it to be legitimate, then completing the application is probably what you're going to need to do, regardless of, hey, I don't want to give you this information, but you may just have to. You make that choice. That's your decision. But you don't want to call and argue with them and say, I'm not going to provide this. If you don't feel comfortable, as Jennifer says, then don't apply.
And the thing I see it on the HR side, it's a risk to hire people. I mean, you've seen in the news, I'm sure all of you, there was some woman, and I forget what town it was, somewhere right around the Chicago area. She was, skimming money off. She had horses. She's in jail now, but there was no checks and balances, and they want to eventually, sometimes they do have to do background checks, and they do need your information, your private information, because they could pull up somebody and it might not be you. And we have had clients that are worried because somebody with their same name, very close, is being pulled up, and that person had some issues and they are thinking it's that person. So again, I get it on the side of the companies. They've got a lot to lose if somebody gets in there and is nefarious. I mean, but I think at the application process, if they're not even sure they're going to interview you, I don't see why we have to provide that information. I know that it's not the reality, but I think until we have some blowback, they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
Empower yourself and see what you can do about it. I don't know. There's a lot of other options maybe for the same types of jobs, and they're not asking for that until later.
And then is there a checklist or things to do to verify potential offers?
I don't know about a checklist, but we did just have our clients on Wednesday. We did salary roundtable, and we talked in depth about, you know, how the process works, how to negotiate. And if you join our organization, you are, you know, able to engage with all those workshops. We have recorded videos for clients, and then we take at the live events a deeper dive into these topics.
Okay, and then I think that's pretty much all the questions are pretty much the same in reference to, you know, the last 4 digits of the social security number, date of birth, and then whether or not to answer the information on the application. So when it comes down to it, in reality, you know, as we may think this information is not necessary, but we're all in the, you know, the interview process and on the applications. Usually the information that they're asking for is something that's needed for you to go through that particular organization and apply. So you make the decision, and that is totally up to you. Do your research on the organization prior to you applying, so that you have knowledge of, hey, I am applying to this particular company. I've done my research. I know that they're asking for this information legitimately while I am in the interview process. So, you know, that's a choice that you have to make on your own. There's nothing that we can tell you whether not to do it or to do it. You have to do your research and determine that.
You can freeze your credit reports. You know, that's something that's typically people do after they've been, you know, hacked somehow. But, you know, if you're not about to buy a new car or a new house, or, you know, you're not about to take out a loan or whatever, you know, maybe just keep it frozen. And that will at least eliminate some stuff that might happen now, but that's not everything, of course. So that's part of the ID theft, which there is more information about how to recover from identity theft or what to do if you start, you know, receiving. I'm going to talk about the UI benefits in just a moment, because some people were hacked with that. That's a whole nother topic. I mean, we could be talking here all day long, and this is just about employment stuff. There's so many other scams, but they all kind of, you know, have a similar thread, and that's people fall for it, and it's an effective business practice, so they keep doing it. So don't give them the business. But let's go ahead. And any other questions?
The last thing is that you should have some kind of software for a protective software, Norton's or what have you, on your computer system. You should always have something that's going to protect your software. That was a question within that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent recommendation. You know, you have to do your updates on your computers. Don't just ignore those. There's usually, when you see those, that's what I think, is that there's some big scam that they figured out. There's some hack or some breach somewhere, and now they're fixing the patch, you know, that the way they got in. But, you know, try and do your updates so that that'll at least prevent that current one from getting through to your computer.
And then we're going to move on to the next session here with Jennifer. We'll hold the questions as we move forward, because time is of an essence, and we'll try to answer as many as we can within the time allotted. But Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So with voicemail, you know, a lot of companies will leave a voicemail if they call you. You know, some of them operate by email, some of them, you know, will contact you by phone. They're not going to hang up and not leave a message. So I know a lot of people are urgently answering every call that they get, but then they get a lot of, you know, people that are calling that are, you know, nefarious, and then they know that that's a live number. So, you know, if you're busy and you can't pick up the phone, don't worry about it. You know, if it's a legitimate call, they're going to leave a voice message. Now you're getting these robocalls. Sometimes those kind of wax and wane. You might get the same ones over and over again. You know, it's just, they put it on auto dialer. And they're, you know, very serious. You know, your police are coming for you. You know, that's crazy. You know, you don't ever have to respond to anything like that. You can block them. You know, that's the best tool on your phone that you have. Now, again, we got a lot of people that were in telecom that come through our doors, and I don't know how they let this one slip through as far as a feature that was available to these scammers, but hopefully they're fixing that. technology is wonderful when it works, but they didn't ever see the outcome of this. Maybe they did and they just didn't bother with it because it didn't, you know, bring them any money. But I do blame telecom for not protecting us from these scams, because they have a way to access and spoof, and it makes it look like it's a legitimate number. So just beware, you know, there are calls that come from certain area codes, again, that might charge huge bills that run up your phone bill. It's kind of like a reverse call. I don't know. It's just crazy that that's even possible.
With all of that said, Jennifer, would you, are there any recommendations on whether or not to use personalized voice messages on your phone?
Well, you can just have your number, or you can just say, you know, please leave a message. And, you know, again, this is all up to you, how much information you want to share with the world, because anybody can dial a phone number and see who it is.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, thank you for calling. I will be returning this phone call as soon as possible. Please leave your information. You know, why do you have to share everything? Don't overshare. All right, so if you go back now to the next slide. So what if you did pay somebody, or if you did, you know, fall for something? You know, you don't have to share that here, but unfortunately it happens to more people than you think because they get caught up, you know. And so just, again, just reach out, report it, make sure that, you know, the story is shared so that the authorities can follow up. They try to build cases, and if they have some information, they might be able to, you know, track down computer networks. You know, I don't know what, you know, I don't know enough about how they operate to find out what they need, but you would definitely want to contact your local authorities, FTC, your Illinois Attorney General, anything that you can do to help prevent other people from falling for it, just by letting people know what's out there. And that's why the AARP Fraud Watch Map and the BB, the Better Business Bureau, they have a fraud scam map, and you can kind of see what's going on across the country because people are reporting this information. But here's how you safeguard your money. Before you accept any business offer, you know, take your time. There's no high pressure sales pitch that requires you to get involved now or you risk losing out. People fall for this. It's greed. You know, there's always greed involved on some level. But if it's too good to be true, don't do it. You know, you're not going to miss out. You're going to miss out, but you're going to miss out on your money. You know, be skeptical of stories, success testimonials, especially those maybe involved in sales, products, you know, online reviews. Those are usually fake. I mean, you know, it's hard to tell. And then don't bank on any cleared checks. If you're told to send some of the money back or use it, buy gift cards, you know, that's a scam. And they're very elaborate, and you can get, you know, you kind of get caught up in it. So again, you can always Google and then type in the word complaint or scam after the company name and see what comes up. They might have a whole bunch of scams all over the country because they're doing this, you know, where and when they can. All right, so let's go into this. This whole, you know, this was a trifecta last year and into this year because we got the stimulus checks, we got unemployment, we've got the census was going on, you know, all this stuff going on, plus COVID. So people are freaking out, and, you know, we just got a lot going on. So I read yesterday anywhere from 36 to $63 billion was lost across the country for unemployment fraud. Now that's outrageous. That's how much fraud was going on in every state. And the scammers would take a look at the state's workforce or, you know, unemployment situation, their workforce systems, and see which ones were the easiest ones, how soon they would send the money. I mean, they had this all that they were sharing with each other because they would target that. California was hit, $11 billion gone. You and I, the taxpayer, will pay for this. It's horrible. But they were, you know, people in prison were getting unemployment. You know, it was just nuts. So hopefully they'll invest in these systems. Any of you in IT, you want a future job, you know, go work with the states and help them. But, you know, unfortunately, that's water under the bridge now. We have to just recover and hope that, you know, if you're going to be doling out hundreds of millions of dollars, hopefully your systems can handle it. They obviously weren't ready. But you got to be careful, you know, and that's why if you're getting a 1099-G form saying that you claimed unemployment last year and you did not, now many of you on this call probably did receive unemployment, so that's legitimate, but some people that were working received these, and that means that their information at some point, it could have been years ago, was probably hacked. Now, whether any money was distributed, but some states, it was like up to 20 grand that these people could collect, especially early on in the pandemic when millions of files, you know, were claimed. You know, they didn't have control of this. So again, you know, these are just some tips. Phishing emails always have urgency, authority, you know, hurry up, you got to do something, click here, do this, you know, open this attachment. No. And again, too, even when you're working somewhere, be very careful. So again, fraud alerts, you know, the companies, you know, that you apply to, they may have some information. I've seen that on many job boards, you know, please be aware that, you know, there is fraud out there, be careful. You know, they will always have, you know, direct emails with their email in it. But again, you don't always know, because these phishing emails can use, you know, DOL.gov. You know, they could figure out a way to do that, and then it's not authentic. So you just always have to verify. It might take you a little longer to get things done if you're really cautious, but that's better than having to, you know, on the back end, have to untangle a mess. All right, so then again, the government agencies are never going to ask you to send them a gift card. You know, this is just nonsense. And they don't ever verify your information over the phone. They will send you mail and letters. And unfortunately, you know, they can go in though and change your address. So again, this is why you don't want to post your address on your resume and post that up on the billboard that everybody on the internet can see. You know, they don't need that information on your resume. Now, when you apply online to a legitimate company and they ask for your address, they're never going to mail you anything, unlikely, and maybe a job offer package or something, but that's down the road. You know, use a mailbox if you don't feel comfortable. Now, this is another way to get up to date. This one guy, he was, you know, a scammer back in the day. Now he's turned legit, and he's on this podcast, Frank Abagnale. He knows how it all operates. He used to do check kiting. I think there was a movie about with Leonardo DiCaprio back in the day. What else? You know, and recruiters, you know, you just got to watch out. Who are they representing? Are they just smiling and dialing? Are they telemarketers? You know, a lot of you are getting tons of calls and emails from telemarketers. It's overwhelming. You know, why don't you reach out to legitimate recruiters that you have heard of and that are someone that's been referred to you? Again, trust after you verify. Again, there's lots of resources, the Fraud Watch Network helpline. You can call Monday through Friday. They are happy to help you with next steps. You know, they're very helpful. You don't have to be a member of AARP, but this is some, you know, some things that you could pass along to others. You know, and if they're just not sure, they could call and just verify, what do you think? And again, this could be any kind of scams, not just employment. So any other questions right now?
I don't have any. I think that's it.
All right.
Wrap up.
You know, we did address this, I believe, in the recruiter call, but a lot of times, you know, recruiters are asking people to sign contracts with the recruiters. You know, that has nothing of benefit to you. You know, it's helping the recruiter obtain a commission if they're a legitimate recruiter. But when they start asking you for all kinds of information and having you sign a contract, you know, talk to an attorney before you sign any contract, first of all, because it's always written for the person that writes the contract. They're going to win. So if you're not writing the contract and you can't amend the contract, I would just not even bother. You know, they are trying to protect their commissions because they're an external recruiter and they're just fishing for candidates. They've got, you know, 5 or 10 every day that they're just trying to fish and dangle this candidate in front of a company to try and land a commission. And they don't want them to go around them, you know. So if you don't understand how recruiters work, you know, educate yourself, watch that webinar that we had last week and make sure that you're on top of what they say, the legitimate recruiters say. That we had several local ones that were very, you know, helpful and that have been helpful to job seekers at workNet DuPage, and they were willing to share with us. So I highly recommend you watch that one. You just go to our website and click on webinars and it'll take you out to the video. All right, so just real quickly, if there's no other questions, I'll just highlight a couple just top scams. This was interesting. You know, most people think, oh, well, it's the older people that aren't as tech, you know, knowledgeable that are getting scammed. Well, no, actually the younger folks, they have actually a higher rate of being scammed, but they just don't lose as much money. So word to the wise, if you're, you know, wet behind the ears, you got to learn about this stuff too. Even if you're on technology and you think you know your stuff, you have to be cautious because they're just able to, you know, navigate. This is what they do. This is what they're good at, scamming people. Just like I might be good at presenting or, you know, coming up with workshop tips, you know, they do this for a living. So they're good at it. And the different states, you know, Illinois was right up there. Maybe because we have a lot of people, you know, in our state, but we also probably have a lot, I would say Minnesota and Illinois tied with Connecticut. I don't know, those states, I don't know if they're just targeting those states, who knows? But it was interesting. All right, so what else? You know, the riskiest scams out there are employment scams. There's lots of scams, but those are one of the top ones, and they also broke it down by who is most targeted. So be careful if you fall into these groups. You know, there's a lot of interesting information out there, but I hope that some of these people would just get a real job. You know, that's all we can hope. And they would just leave the rest of us alone that are trying to do our jobs and get a job. So again, you know, a lot of companies, this was right before the pandemic, you know, they impersonated big companies in the news. They, you know, they were commonly referred to. So you think, oh, you know, this is legitimate. It's Amazon or Target or Walmart. But the, you know, it's always something about urgent, you're hired immediately. We don't even care what your skills are, but you're hired. So give us your information. But there's no job, you know, so they're trying to suck you into some kind of scam and you don't want to fall for it. Now, you know, packages, you're basically taking stolen merchandise and forwarding it on. And you're going to be part of a criminal operation. And some people have gotten in a lot of trouble because they should have known better. Maybe they were just dumb, but they, you know, you got to tell the judge that when you're involved in it and you keep doing it. So again, you want to be careful. You're not getting caught up in something, you know, and then you might not get paid. Maybe they get you going and then all of a sudden you're not getting paid and you can't find anybody on a phone call, you know, and they're across the world. You don't know who you were talking to. So how you spot a job scam, you know, just again, be careful. Just be suspicious. know where you are in the sequence of your job search. You know, again, you're not going to get an offer until you interview. And you know that interviews usually are something that is thoughtfully considered before they even consider somebody for an interview. So again, you got to be careful. Now, robocalls, again, you don't want to, you know, respond to those. Just delete them. Just hang up. There's not a whole lot of other information, I think, that we haven't repeated. So what we're going to do is, you know, just be sure you pass this on. Make sure that everyone that you know in your community or in your family, you know, that they're aware of these things. Not everybody knows. I've learned a lot over the years. I've been doing this since 2017. And it's just, it keeps evolving. And then of course, when we had the pandemic, that just made it huge. So hopefully, you know, taking time to find a good job, it will take time and effort. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably, you know, and you know, you're likely to be scammed if you respond. So just don't respond. Just delete it. You know, it really sounds crazy. Talk to somebody. Call us. Let us know what's going on before you do anything. And again, we understand, you know, you're searching for a job. You're vulnerable. You want a job. And so these people are preying on your situation, which is horrible. So the more you can, you know, protect yourself, you know, don't ask about, you know, or don't provide information. If someone's asking you for it, ask why they need it. You know, push back. Say, I'll be happy to give that information after I receive a job offer. You know, I'd love to have an interview, but again, if it's a shady company or, you know, not a company you're really too concerned about, just move on. You know, if it's a really important job lead and it's a legitimate company and you verified that, then yes, you know, you could probably feel confident. Again, you never know, but you could probably feel more confident in providing that information. So any other questions?
With scams, they ask if you should block it or delete. If it's a scam, just delete your email. I mean, just delete it.
Well, again, you know, if you know, you may want to go in and identify who you really need to be continuing to speak with and just let them know about your new email address.
If you get an email scam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand the question. What's the question?
The question is, if I get a scam email, should I block it or delete it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, just delete it. Don't
That's
respond.
what I said, delete it. Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing to do is, and if you want to take that extra step, if there's a way in your internet email system to mark it as junk and or, you know, phishing, I know in Outlook you can mark it, and I try to take that extra step because what that does is that sends a message back to the internet providers that that IP address, that email address. I mean, you can get an email, you can make up 3,000 new email addresses in a heartbeat. I mean, if you have one internet host account, you can have thousands of email addresses. So that's not going to stop them. They're just going to come up with a new email address.
And then is it a harm to open your email if it's a scam?
Well, you can preview usually in most systems. It's okay to open it, you know, unless there's some kind of Trojan horse in there that upon opening that I'm not aware of, but, you know, don't click on any links, hover over them. Make sure if you go to any, if they're directing you to go to the company website, just go and type in the company website in your browser and see what the jobs are there. You know, go direct. Don't go through these, you know, unless it's a recruiter or, you know, that, you know, like a large international organization is probably not going to find you and send you an email and say you have to reply immediately. You know, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. They are fielding, you know, sometimes 10 to 500 applications per job posting. So why would they reach out to one individual. Unless
Right.
for some reason, you know, you're on LinkedIn and all your information's there, then they're going to contact you via LinkedIn, most likely.
And then we're going to wrap up with the last two questions. And one is, how do I know if I was hacked?
Well, you know, you'll start seeing some weird stuff maybe, but I would just, you know, you don't know. They could have hacked you 5 years ago in that, almost 5 years ago in that Equifax, but you can go ahead, if you Google Equifax hack or, you know, how to protect yourself, there's information that will probably lead you to it in this PDF that you're going to receive after the event. We're going to send out an evaluation and attachment, so you'll see that all at once. I'm going to go ahead and just show the code for anybody that needs to take off. I know we've gone a little over today, but the code today is SCAMS 528. If you are working with a counselor, just email them and let them know that you attended today. That'll count towards your monthly contact. So going back to the question, so hopefully, you know, if you are, you know, able to, I don't know if I answered it. I kind of went back to the scams code. So
if you were hacked.
Yeah, you know, if you're not sure, I would just go ahead, you know, you could put a freeze on your credit accounts. You could change your passwords. Well, that's what they say to do. Make sure you just tighten everything up, you know, make sure that you don't have, go check the settings on your Facebook and on your other social media accounts. Those can sometimes be left open by, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is classic for moving things, you know, 9 steps forward, and he gets told, oh no, you can't do that. Well, then he only goes back, you know, 1 step. So he got 8 steps. And what those organizations, they depend on eyeballs. Same with LinkedIn. More people that visit their sites, that's how they sell more to advertisers and people spend more money with them. It's a self-fulfilling, you know, and we're all hooked on the social media, but you have to be careful about what you share out there. Oh, I'm going on vacation. I see this on Nextdoor all the time. People are telling probably like 12,000 people that they're going on vacation. Why would you put that on a billboard on the highway? And here's my, you know, here's my contact information. Basically, they have their name, you know, it takes you 2 seconds to Google somebody. Be careful. You know, people are very trusting. And, you know, unfortunately, you can't do that with social media. You got to be careful of what you're doing. And it's okay. Take a step back. If you're not sure, take a step back. And again, everybody has different levels of computer knowledge, computer savvy, but even the smartest people get sucked into these things. You know, you don't be down on yourself if you have been scammed, because these are very sophisticated operations. We're just trying to give you as much information as possible so that you don't, you know, get hooked into anything that could, you know, cause you time, trouble, or any dollars. Any other final questions?
That's all we have. That's it.
Well, great. Well, I know we went a little over. If you would like to sign up for future events, you can go to our workNet DuPage website. Again, we're going to send out the resource guide, but if you, you know, have to, if you don't get it for some reason, you can contact Siobhan at zmorse@worknetdupage.org. But again, you should be receiving that if you signed up for this workshop. You'll be getting a PDF of the entire presentation, and there are more slides that I have with a lot of links. There's about, I don't know, 10 more slides that I'm not going to show, but there's just a lot of good resource information for you from different agencies and how to stay safe out there. So thanks for attending. Again, there's going to be some more events coming up. Just check out our website, and you can go to webinars and watch the replays. You can see the calendar, see what's happening. And then we do have a ton of jobs on our workNet DuPage job board from local employers in DuPage County. You know, if you are working with unemployment, hopefully they've got some of these bugs worked out now that we've been into this for a while. But, you know, again, if you have any concerns or questions, you can contact them through their website. I would recommend doing it that way because you're not going to get through on the phone very easily. They might call you back in a couple of weeks, you know, depending on the time and how many people are calling. But you can always submit messages through their Illinois WorkNet, Illinois Job Link website. Illinois WorkNet has many tips and information. Hopefully you can check that out. But that is all we have for today. And I really appreciate that you came and that you helped, you know, share this with others. If you choose to do so, hopefully we can not give them any more business, the scammers, and you can protect yourself. Thanks again for coming. This is concluding our presentation. Have a great long weekend and enjoy it. Talk to you soon.